Hi guys, welcome to our next video of Meet the Ambassadors. This evening I'm talking to Alannah, who is the former president of AGECS and the AGECS RAP lead. Hi Alannah.
Hello, how are
I'm
you?
glad you could join us today.
Thank you, it's great to be here.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so early childhood background and / counselling background. So I ran my own personal development business for over 20 years, in addition to having many moons of teaching in early childhood. I've also been in inclusion support, so involved in that, and worked at FKA, Multicultural Resource Centre, as a consultant casually, that was for some time. And I'm currently doing a PhD on emotional wellbeing for pre-service teachers. So I'm currently doing casual teaching at Fed Uni.
Cool. How long have you been there for?
Fed Uni, about 5 years now. Yeah. So really enjoying that, and hoping that, after 40 years of experience or so, I can bring something back to the table, but really enjoying incorporating elements of what we've learned since I've been on AGECS with you, AJ.
And how long have you been on AGECS for?
AGECS for about, getting on to 9 years now, probably. And for 2 years of that, I was vice president, 2 years I was president, and then in the last year, past president. And now I'm just I'm still on council, but mainly I really enjoy focusing on the Reconciliation Action Plan for AGECS and looking forward to starting the next Reconciliation Action Plan together.
Cool. Alannah, what does Australia Day mean to you?
That's been a changing process over time, over the last couple of decades. So originally it when it first became a public holiday was probably when I realised, oh, it's a thing. What does this mean for me? And it didn't mean much. Just a little bit confused, really. And that was when I was first starting to really understand more about what was happening in Aboriginal, with Aboriginal issues around it and that. And then as I got to know more, I was quite disturbed by it. And probably by the time, now that I know so much, I've learned so much over the last particularly recent years that I'm quite angry about it, really angry about it, actually. Yeah, I just wish it had just stopped. I don't know why this is happening. It's quite disturbing, because to me, the fact that we're continually, every year, it still hasn't changed, tells me there's another year of, ignorance, and ignorance is race. It's racist. It's not listening to Aboriginal voices. So I'm very angry. Each year I don't like it. I don't really like being around Australia Day. And
Why do you think it's such a contentious day for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people?
Well, it's just who came up with this idea that it was that date? Really, I don't know. I've never looked into it. You might know, AJ, but it actually aligns with the start of colonisation and Phillip arriving in Sydney Cove. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense in a civilised so-called society, or with a civilised so-called government. For Aboriginal people, how I understand it, and what I've read, watched, listened to, and in person listened to, not just online, not just recordings, is that it's a day of invasion, it's a day of mourning, it's a day of deep, deep loss. And it's like celebrating a Holocaust. It just doesn't make any sense. The mind boggles, really.
What are ways in which you can teach early childhood educators or kids about Australia Day?
I think talk about it, talk about the other aspects, don't shy away from it. That's really, really important. And, you know, the truth telling it's brutal. So it's about not shying away from that either with educators. Of course, little children, you know, we've got to acknowledge the developmental stage of children. We don't want to traumatize children because the truth is traumatic. And but there's ways about it, and there's lots of stories, particularly in the last 10 years. There's a lot of beautiful storybooks to talk about, you know. So it's not so much about the day, but about why the day is challenging and what happened to Aboriginal people. So I guess for me, when I talk about it, I'm not talking about the 26th of January. It's like, okay, acknowledge this date commemorates colonisation, which is just no other country does it except Australia. No national day of significance is aligned with the start of colonisation. But so that's one thing. But then go into, you know, the truth telling. I think that's and there's various ways of doing that and raising, you know, just questions with children. It's more making it, you know, with little children where we're appealing to their sense of empathy, their emerging sense of empathy, particularly as they become more socially minded with other children and other people. And so you can use ways that kind of they can relate to, you know, what would it be like if this such and such, you know, took your favourite teddy or something and said you can't use that, or what would it be like if someone came into here now at kinder and said, okay, you've all got to stop speaking English. What would that be like? And yeah, and children are really interesting. They can get some really amazing insights in that. I did a lot of this kind of stuff in inclusion support too.
What about staff?
With fellow educators is just going into the true stories. One of the things that I've done with other educators is said, have you ever heard of the massacre map? I know this is really hard yakka, but have you ever? No, what's that? I said, wow, it's part of the truth telling. And, you know, they can go online and they can look. And what I've actually raised at times too is, you know, and sometimes when I've worked with educators in the past too with this, and we've looked at the map together and you know, then it actually doesn't have the true representation of what happened, because a lot of these massacres happened in secret, my understanding is. And I, for decades, have known, I grew up around the Gippsland area, and I give this example and I say, well, you know, look at your local area, get to know what happened in your local area. What's the little dots on the map there? What do they tell you? Well, there'll be a whole lot more there that's not even on the map. And I give them the example of a story I heard a few decades ago about a whole community in Warragul being massacred. And it's not on the current map. I can't see it. I've tried to find it. So I don't know if it's on another one, maybe in the museum. I know they've got one in the museum. The one online, I can't find that. So that's one that kind of a lot of people around the area, they know, we know about it. We know that happened. And it's appalling. It's appalling. Yeah, so there's many, many, many examples of that. Little things like that. Again, it's the truth telling, going to the truth telling, that there's 5 kind of facets in that I read about on the Reconciliation Australia website, which I went on to not long after we decided, right, we're doing a wrap with AGECS. And I'd already kind of visited there, but I really kind of did a deep dive. And the 5 facets, the 5 outcomes for reconciliation, I think you'd call them, And one of them is the historical acceptance. And to me, that's what the 26th, well, I'm going into reconciliation now, but that's what the 26th of January is about. Really, let's open our eyes and do that part, that truth telling. This is why Aboriginal people are saying they don't want it.
So, Alannah, what does reconciliation mean to you?
Okay, so in its simplest form, my understanding of the word reconciliation is righting a wrong. And in order to do that, we need to listen, we need to hear, we need to know what was the wrong. And then, okay, I might not have been alive when my ancestors, I'm a settler Australian, I'm not a migrant. My ancestors were around, and I don't know what happened. I don't know even if they played a part in all of the atrocities. Who knows? But accepting responsibility, the fact that I'm still actually benefiting off all the suffering from those that have gone before, but also current, that there's still a blind eye, my understanding, and this is what Aboriginal voices are still saying, that we're suffering from intergenerational trauma. It's happening right now. So accepting responsibility is a big, big part of reconciliation. Yeah, I think that would be probably my big take from that.
How do you explain reconciliation to young people?
So with children, again, I think you can easily use things that they can relate to. They've particularly in early childhood, because one of our major focuses as teachers and educators is social and emotional learning. Reconciliation can be woven into anything, every day, conversations. It might be just something like, a child finds a caterpillar in the garden, for example, and you start talking about the caterpillar and what it might do and what it's going to turn into a butterfly. And then, you can just, and this is what I have done, is just, I wonder what it'd be like for a little child, maybe, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, who found a caterpillar before, maybe who was on country, and they look at you, they cock their head, and they've got that beautiful curiosity, and then their beautiful conversations open up. Lots of opportunities for reconciliation, for discussing things like that. And so it doesn't have to be a particularly, I've got to do an activity on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures or whatever, perspectives or whatever. It can be woven into everything. And so they understand the meaning of the word in their whole context.
So what activities can you do in the classroom that demonstrates reconciliation?
So I probably answered that a little bit by just saying, you can weave it through the program into anything. Don't wait for a particular moment where, this will be good for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture or whatever. But in saying that, there are many, on the Narragansett Wally website, if anyone wanting guidance, there's some really great resources and ideas there. But locally, the first thing they will do is then send you back and say, go local. So while that's there as a national support, it's always come back to your local area. So look out, bring in culture, Aboriginal people, Torres Strait Islander people who run cultural workshops, that kind of thing. And the children will learn and you will learn as well. And there's a lot more available now, accessible, that can bring in dance, creativity. I think you interviewed, there was one fellow who came up from around Albury Way, where I used to live,
Taylor?
Hampton. And and there was another one, Good Tomorrow Man.
Shay Rothermere?
Yeah, so they were a couple of examples. So can certainly go to the AGECS Reconciliation Series 1 page, and there's a whole section on ideas of what to do.
What's your dream of Reconciliation Australia?
I really love the 5 outcomes on the Reconciliation Australia website, and I think that's a beautiful guide. But when I look at those 5 outcomes, I'm also saddened to see how we're falling short of them. And the race relations is one of them. You spoke about the 26th of January. To me, we're falling short, just that without anything else. That's one of them. The unity, that we'll be proud of the Aboriginal heritage and Torres Strait heritage in Australia, that everyone in Australia will embrace it and actually really look up to the First Peoples and what they bring. And also because, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples have this beautiful past and present to bring. But while I'm doing my PhD on emotional well-being, I'm actually going into kind of post-humanist stuff, and there's a branch of post-humanists called New Materialists, and there's one paper that I read that said it's not new materialism, NEW, it's KNEW, because so much of this stuff is the stuff that's brought through by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. So really, we've got a way to go. And then there's a few others. There's there's the historical acceptance, there's equity, close the gap. When we close the gap. Early childhood actually has done pretty well for some of those outcomes, but I think ultimately it's the institutional integrity when we can get the government and the community and the businesses all aligned, and we're all listening to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voices.
So, Alannah, what are some places that early childhood educators can go to start educating themselves on the history, but also the contemporary issues faced by Aboriginal people?
Yeah, well, I'll start with contemporary issues. I know people say, oh, social media, it's bad. I actually think social media is great. It's a bit like money. It's what you do with it, And I follow some really amazing Aboriginal singers, artists, leaders, politicians. You want to get contemporary issues, you just go on Instagram. It'll be popping up all the time. There is information coming at you all the time. You couldn't help, if you were reading any of it, even just a little post, you couldn't help to not pick up some things. And but go local. There's local groups. There's educators, VAI, Victorian Aboriginal Education Association. There's Narragansett, which is not local, that's more national. I keep saying come back local as much as you can. There's a place that I accessed when I was doing inclusion and support, the closest one I could access, because we didn't have a co-op in the area, in the Bay Area where I was doing inclusion support. So I went to the Dandenong one, and they were fantastic. They're just so welcoming. If you want to know, they want, if you're ready to listen, they want to tell you, and or direct you in the right direction, or link you up to a person or whatever. But yeah, start there if you're not really sure. Go to the AGECS website. We've got so much. AJ, you've done such an amazing. This is unprecedented. You've covered so many aspects. What one thing that you've kept reminding us is when we enrol a child, pardon me, we enrol a family. When we enrol an Aboriginal child, we enrol a family. And of course, we're not just talking about having Aboriginal children in your centre. We're talking about creating culturally safe early childhood contexts right across the board so that Aboriginal families then feel welcome. It's about getting sorted before you have an Aboriginal family possibly knocking at your door, or they might never, because they might not feel welcome anyway, is what I understand. But go local as much. Go to events, attend an event. It's amazing who you meet and what you pick up just by going to a concert or maybe there's a ceremony, or they're happening all the time locally and maybe in the wider region. And then, of course, they're happening state and nationally. So there's all different levels you can access.
Question, what would be 2 things that every educator should know about working with First Nations families?
I really love the saying, and I think it was one of the early ones. It's been said before, but the way it was said really stuck with me. Nothing about us without us. And that has been a big thing. There seems to have been a confusion. If people are starting a reconciliation action plan, a RAP, they can kind of run off and do it themselves. Just, we'll do it. And of course, it doesn't make any sense. It's reconciliation. Reconciliation is about mending. It's about listening. So that would be a biggie. And, this is a really tough question because I could have a list of another 10 things, but probably the other thing is go local. It's getting much better, but when I first started exploring Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives over a decade ago, people would, I want to teach in an Aboriginal community. I'm going to go north. I'm going to go to Broome. I'm going to go to Fitzroy Crossing. I'm going to go to the Yap, and stay here where you are. Where do you live? Where do you work? Because it's here. That was a big lesson for me. And I can say, 30 years ago, that's what I wanted to do. That's what I thought. I had a drawing towards Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives then, but I thought I had to go north until I got the wake-up call.
So, Alannah, what are some of the barriers you believe early childhood educators have when trying to incorporate First Nations perspectives into curriculum?
I know this is probably confronting, but I think white privilege. I think that sometimes we can't, getting our own blinkers off, and also misinformation. Because, see, I was educated decades ago. There was nothing, absolutely nothing. I had no idea. And it was only when I started to teach at TAFE in Wodonga, we had a cultural awareness day. It was the first time I learned about the stolen generation. That was about 30 years ago. And I was just stunned. So, yeah, I think ignorance, and I don't think it's necessarily anyone's fault or anything as far as individuals go, but I think it is our responsibility as soon as we get it's suggested to us that we don't know what we don't know. It's our responsibility to then start finding out, start reaching out and finding out. It's not hard these days. It's a lot easier these days than it was. You could be going around chasing your tail even 7 years ago. But I think that the ignorance is and then there's and for some people it is getting out of their own way. the other thing I'd have to say is that, see, in early childhood education as teachers, we are encouraged to be very individualistic, to be very proactive, to be very, we lead the project, we get out there. And if you want to learn about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives, and you want to make a personal connection from the heart, you need to be able to completely flip that over and stop and be quiet, listen from the heart. That's one thing that a beautiful Aboriginal kindergarten teacher in Mooroopna taught me, listen from the heart. So it's just about getting the information here. It's got to be the heart as well. And
So what about barriers that early childhood educators have themselves in terms of teaching Aboriginal kids?
I think it's off the back of what I've just said, but it's another step further that, and even I know when I've discussed this with people, when I've been doing inclusion support, is they're trying to nut out what to do about this. How can I do the right thing about this family? And my question is, have you asked them? So going to the family, or maybe there might be one member, it might not be always the family, maybe they're not in a space that they want to be able to share, but is there someone who's working with the family that you can find out another way in? There might be an auntie, there might be someone else, and we found that really helpful. So that's from my experience what I've found. I'm sure there's probably a zillion barriers, but that's a standout for me.
So, Alannah, what has been your journey about learning about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures and history?
I mentioned earlier about being at a cultural awareness day and learning about the stolen generation and being quite shocked. Another part of that shock was that I had grown up with fellow children who happened to be Aboriginal in the country town that I lived in. And suddenly I was understanding what their experience was that I had no idea as a child. As a child, that was just another child I played with, usually at the pool. And I couldn't believe it. I thought, okay, that's why there was only one family in that country town. And then I realised that was an actual ploy to separate people when they came from the missions, and just the consideration of who they were as citizens of Australia. And it was shocking. And then since then, just wanting to learn more. So just reaching out, just reaching out, whatever role I'm playing, whether it's a professional role or just personally. So personally, I might be just going to events, and that has been beautiful, go back to the museum and go back to, and go to that event again, or go to a different one, but have it on your calendar each year. 2023, what am I going to do? How am I going to? So that's a personal journey of engaging, and that's been beautiful. That's been really beautiful, the cultural side. And then from the professional point of view, when the day after I stepped up as president for AGECS, I announced to the executive that by hook or by crook, we have to have a reconciliation action plan. We need to get something going here. And that, I didn't really know what that meant, really. When I look back and reflect now, it's meant so much more, and I've learned so much more. I knew I was going to learn. I knew I was going to have to unlearn, but it's just so much more and so much bigger than I ever anticipated, and so enriching, because personally it is so enriching a journey as well.
Do you think sometimes it's been challenging?
Yeah, it certainly has. And I'd have to say, if you start, be prepared to be enriched, be prepared to be humble. That's really, really big one. Be prepared to let go control, to step back, to listen deeply. But yeah, and be prepared to be challenged. And I think you've said it, and I think Tristan's said it, I think others, Kerry, it's all along the way that you'll make mistakes. Just do it. Just do it anyway. Feel the fear and do it anyway of making mistakes. Yeah, definitely challenged.
Do you have any Aboriginal role models that you look up to, or idols?
I do. You. You never cease to amaze me. And our community representatives on the AGECS RAP, Kerry Douglas and Tristan Williams and Kay Mondon, always get the surname wrong, Bindi James. Yeah, so we've got, I'm really quite in awe of all of you. But probably I did a project many moons ago for, it was with a grant money from AGECS, and with this project it was a video project, and my mentor for this video project was Auntie Sue Lopez Atkinson, and I was so green. And she was so patient, just with her wisdom. And I thought, oh my God, she's got a million things. I think at the time she was on 15 committees. She
still is, I think.
Probably 30. But yeah, I'd have to say, and she's now got an Order of Australia. And I think, thank goodness. I mean, wow, you probably all deserve Orders of Australia, but it was really, I look back then, I think when you're very green and then you come further down the track and you realise, wow, the more you learn, the more you realise there's a lot to learn. There's even more to learn. It really does make you appreciate the patience of people that have supported you, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who have supported you along the way.
So, Alannah, have you any experience in working on a reconciliation action plan?
I have, on the AGECS Reconciliation Action Plan. So we decided, when I was president, we decided that we were actually coming in, AGECS was coming into their 100-year anniversary. So it was I stepped up as president in the 98th year. And thought, well, I think it's time. That was a journey, and the first thing I did was ask Auntie Sue, who we need a guide, we need someone to support us, and who do you recommend? And she recommended you, AJ. And we've never looked back. We started with a cultural awareness training, which was absolutely imperative and necessary. So starting out, get some cultural. It was really huge to do that cultural awareness training with you right at the start. It set the stage, I think, for us to, not that we really knew what we were doing, but we were in a much better space to move forward with your guidance.
What are some easy things and hard things about working on a RAP?
I think once you've got that Aboriginal guidance and support, the easy thing is just listen. Just go, what do we do for that? When you get stuck, just ask. We have also community representatives on the RAP. That was really, really important, to have multiple Aboriginal voices. So that was the very easy part, was just to go seek help. Like, what do we do with this, or what do we do next? They weren't doing it for us, but they were certainly there to bounce off, so we could check in all the time. Did you ask what was the hard things? Yeah. I think the hard things was, it was challenging sometimes it's just confusing and you just don't know. And I think we're so trained, as I said, as teachers, to be in control, and it's a process, it's a journey. It's not this tick thing, we've done that. It's accepting the process of the whole thing, and sometimes I think we may have all found that a little bit challenging. Yeah.
What advice would you give early childhood centres that are wanting to start on the RAP? Where should they start?
Wow. This is my object. I really want to share about the grants, AGECS grants. So, first of all, if you want to start, I would suggest go to Narragansett. That's a really good start. That will springboard you back to your local, to go local, but they'll give you a bit of guidance on how to do that. And that they're really, really supportive. And if anyone wants to know more about that, AJ actually did an interview with Esma and Alannah from Narragansett, is that right? From Narragansett, and there's lots of information on that. So I really encourage you to have a look at that, and definitely make sure you've done some cultural awareness training. But also at AGECS, we have we don't personally AGECS, we do have an affiliation with the Forest Hill grants and the Warrawong grants. So one's for the professional development. So for cultural awareness training, there's actually grants, and the other one is the Forest Hill grants. That would be to do your RAP. So when you're doing a reconciliation action plan, you want to have some community representatives on your team that are Aboriginal community representatives. Well, we paid sitting fees for each meeting they attended and supported us on. We did the run around. They didn't do any run around. They were advisors. And that's important. And we hired a designer, an Aboriginal designer, to design our RAP. So it costs. So AGECS would just like to, if you go to the AGECS website, you'll find out more. Go under the grants tab, you'll find out more about the grants for that. But yes, often that's a barrier for people. But this is going to cost money. So we're saying, well, let's see if we can help. Might not always with everything, but at least there might be something.
What are things that early childhood centres shouldn't be doing?
Doing it on their own. That's probably the big one. And it's a big one that comes up time and time again. Someone told me a few years ago that there was an Aboriginal, there was an organisation who had hired an Aboriginal support, an advisor, and centres were choosing, that's okay, we're right. Yeah, so hopefully that's the only one and only time that it happened. It was multiple centres in one organisation, but and hopefully that's changed. Hopefully people understand that you need to reach out. Don't do it with Aboriginal voices.
Yeah. So in summary, why is it important for organisations and early childhood centres to actually have reconciliation action plan?
Oh boy, we need an hour for that one. In a nutshell, well, it's on the national quality standard, guys. You're expected to actually embed Aboriginal perspectives. So a reconciliation action plan is a really good way to do that. It's a really easy way to do that. By embedding Aboriginal perspectives, you're also reconciling. It's a social justice issue. that's it. It's a social, we live in a society that's not equal. It's lacking equity. So we all have a responsibility, every person in Australia, to do something towards reconciling. So that's it in a nutshell.
And the final question I've got for tonight, Alannah, is what takeaway message do you want early childhood educators to walk away with from listening to the podcast tonight?
I hope that you're inspired to get moving, and I want you to feel confident, that you feel more confident, like, okay, I can do this, because I know a lot of educators are out there really nervous, worried about doing the wrong thing, worried about being disrespectful. That I hope this gives you some inspiration. I started where you are. Yes, I relate to that. And I still feel that. There's plenty of times I still feel that. But I hope you have a little bit more confidence to do it, and you're inspired to get out there and get started.
Well, Alannah, we've come to the time I've got to say goodbye. So I just want to say thank you for hanging with us tonight and having a bit of a yarn with us.
Thanks, AJ. It's been great.
Thanks, Alannah. Bye-bye.